Okay, day 47. It's really neat to see how I'm getting to about halfway through this project. I'm getting pretty close to that halfway marker. Today is a lower energy day for me. If I'm not careful, I very quickly watch energy shoot into my mind, and suddenly I'm in the mind, just lost in it, lost in the mind shatter when I was talking about yesterday. On these days where it feels like something's been activated, like I've dug deep and now I'm dredging up some kind of dirt from low down, I can experience a kind of, it reminds me of quitting caffeine. I've often joked that I don't think caffeine works as a type of psychoactive medicine for processing emotions the way some other substances can, but caffeine withdrawal definitely does. My caffeine brings all of this buzziness into it, but with caffeine withdrawal, I sometimes find I will drop into these spaces of being, I mean, certainly it can be tired, but also scared and sad. And it sort of brings up feelings that my normal energetic way of being doesn't it doesn't let me see. Like the hum of my personality's operating system is too loud for me to hear the quiet voices in the basement. But sometimes the whole thing revs, the whole thing comes down a little bit. Sort of the wisdom of depression, I guess. I don't feel depressed. I don't really get depressed anymore. I used to. I didn't really recognize it at the time, but I used to. So part of what had me go, oh, this is the moment to jump on. So there's a blog. There's a blog that a lot of people in my social circles, especially the ones down in the Bay Area, used to read quite a lot, called Slate Star Codex. And that went down for quite a while because there was a whole issue where, I think it was the New York Times, if I remember right, was basically threatening to dox the, threatening is not the right word, planning on doxing the author of that blog. And rather than give them anything to work with, because like it was actually very dangerous for him in very personal ways. So he went, nope, I'm not going to give them anything to work with. So he just pulled down his blog. This is devastating to quite a lot of people. Recently, I learned that he has come back. He has a new blog. And yeah, so a lot of people are celebrating about that. And I find myself happy about that as well. I really like his writings. I like the quality of his thinking and the clarity of his perspective. There are a few points where, like with any human, there are a few points where I go, I don't know if that's true, or I just flat out disagree with this point of view. But this isn't about agreement or disagreement. This is about the quality of thinking and the willingness to show up. We have tremendous respect for people who bring forward a sincere energy towards clarity of thinking. And I sort of don't care what they think as long as they think well. And that's something I have a lot of respect for. And I see that very much in that author. And I noticed a kind of sinking feeling. A lot of people are saying, oh, man, this guy can write. And I've sometimes gotten that comment too for me, for my writings, that I'm a very skilled writer. But I'm nowhere near as prodigious as that fellow. I'm not doing as much I haven't actively impacted as many people. People aren't talking everywhere about my writings, as far as I know. Or maybe they are, and I'm kind of emotionally filtering it out. And they would be talking about me as much if I wrote as much. But what I want to highlight here is the energy behind that whole, like the comparison thing, the inadequacy feeling. Like, oh, look at all this stuff Scott's doing. And here I am, like doing what? I'm preparing. I'm trying to orient. I'm doing all this inner work. I'm showing up in these videos, sure, but I could be doing so much more. And there's a kind of guilt that appears. This is the normal way that I experience something like jealousy. I don't wish that the other person weren't there. It's more like I'm using the other person's existence as fuel for my own inadequacy. It's just a very automatic machine. Consciously, I look at that and I go, what's this? I don't agree with this. Maybe I could show up more. Maybe I could write more. But there are reasons I don't as well. And definitely feeling bad about it, whipping myself on the inside is not helpful. What is the kind, true thing? What is the clearest way for me to orient? Those questions feel important. They feel right for me. They feel like the right questions to ask at all, ever, anywhere. But still, I notice this kind of burbling energy, and in the spirit of, oh, I don't want to do emotional post-processing here. I don't want to deal with this after it arises. There's this mechanism that I can see very clearly of, oh, if I do that, I'm not addressing the generator. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I am feeling this way while I'm in a lower energy state. I'm quiet enough to be able to hear it. This, oh, I suck, I could be doing so much more. I'm like, okay, I don't believe that narrative consciously, but some part of me clearly does. There's something about these quieted states that remind me of the Quechua practice of plant dieta. It's Quechua is the name that that at least one of the tribes. I'm not quite sure how widespread the term is used, but it's at least the names of one of the tribes that are native to Peru. The name that they give themselves, the Quechua people. Their language is Quechua. So and I think that this is a very widespread practice. It's very clear that there are hints of this all over the Americas and the indigenous cultures. And I think there were hints of this in Europe and Asia as well. I don't know about Africa. The practice is basically you starve or weaken yourself. You avoid things that have too, I would say, too strong a frequency. They have too strong a presence. So in the modern world, this would require disconnecting from the internet and avoiding having intense conversations with people. Typically, you go on some kind of retreat, or you go out into the woods, maybe in a cabin. If you're reading things that are more spiritual, less about information. And the point of all of this is sort of let the ripples calm down. So there's very little going on in your system. You'd eat only very simple, plain foods, nothing with strong flavors, because strong flavors stimulate the senses, and you're trying to quiet the senses. The theory is something like when you take salt out of your diet, at first everything tastes bland, but after a while you sort of get used to it, and in getting used to it, your tastes are more sensitive. And certainly you could get the burst of flavor by tossing some salt on. But if you're trying to detect really subtle flavors, it can be helpful to remove the salt. And in particular, if you're trying to detect saltiness, it's easier if you're really, really finely tuned to flavor without salt, so that when you taste salt, there's an explosion of flavor. It's the same idea. You would weaken the body in a particular way, often with vegetarian diets, definitely no meat. And very plain foods, it sort of weakens the body and puts it in a slightly altered state. And in that state, the one thing that you take in that is a strong substance is whatever plant whose spirit you want to come to know. This is one of the classic cornerstones of training for shamans to become familiar with, for instance, mapacho, which is the name that they give for tobacco, and later on for ayahuasca. There's this tight coupling between mapacho and ayahuasca as spirits. As the legends go, the mapacho spirit, after shamans had attuned to mapacho in this kind of plant dieta way, when they listened to the spirit of mapacho, mapacho told them how to brew the ayahuasca vine with the chacuna leaves, I think it is, in order to create the super psychoactive medicine that is so famous from South America. So right now I'm feeling something kind of like that. There's this gift of the slowness, the diminishment. In another video, I referred to this as a gift of Saturn. Like in the Western culture, a traditional Western culture, this is one of the 7 planetary deities. The influence of Saturn is exactly this gift of truth through quiet and the stillness, being in touch with the grief and the capacity for grief. And I feel that kind of diminishment, and it makes it super refined to feel this little glimmer of inadequacy, to feel that sort of knocking me around a little bit. I don't know why I shifted this way, this kind of dip in energy. Sometimes I think it's just because, now looking at the roots. Not at the branches, not at the leaves, but looking down in the dirt, in the dark, in the roots. This is the next natural step of working on aligning myself more fully with truth, in answering the problem of evil, embodying the answer to the problem of evil. The thing with the blog reminds me from many years ago when I saw that Google announced the Calico project. Well, the Calico project I haven't heard a whisper of in a number of years, but the Calico project was it was Google announcing that it was going to throw its resources at solving the aging problem. And I felt a glimmer of excitement and a whole lot of sadness and inadequacy, this particular special sort of victim version of jealousy, as opposed to persecutor version of jealousy, which is the more typical version. So this feeling of, I had been trying to do things about aging for about a decade at that point. And it seemed like Google was probably just going to win, and I had nothing to do with the causal chain that had Google doing that. So nothing I did mattered. So all of my attention, my immediate emotional focus wasn't on, hey, the world is addressing this issue that I cared about. It was focused on, what does it mean about me? What does it mean about me? And the same thing happens here with this author, Scott, who comes out and puts forward a new blog. And people are saying, yeah, I saw one person at least saying, oh, this guy's this guy sure can write. Wow. Instead of the primary sense of joy about, oh, look, there's more elegance and clear thinking in the world. Like that feeling is there for me. But the place that this part of me, I can feel it, it's like 2 inches below my solar plexus. It's like just a little bit below my rib cage. Like it's this uncomfortable feeling of, but what does that mean about me? What does it mean about me? And there's another energy there that wants to fight it. Like, it's not about me. Here are the reasons it's not about me. Let's rehearse this move. Let's clean it out. I'm like, okay. But there is a feeling of inadequacy there. And it keeps regrowing. It feels a little bit like doing gardening. We keep pulling out the weeds. And of course, you just need to keep pulling out weeds. It's part of what gardening is. But if the same weed keeps regrowing in the same spot, yeah, sure, it takes a little longer for it to grow. And they can just pluck it out. I get really good at plucking it out. I think when I'm walking through my garden, I just reach down and yank out that particular one again. But that means that I haven't dug down deep enough to get to the root. So I wanted to show up in this stage of working with this. I actually don't quite know why. It just seemed very clear. I wanted to put energy into articulating it so it would be precise. So when I speak to something, it becomes clearer. I have clearer knowing of it. Much of today I have not been able to use my mind because the energy goes so much into the mind that I can't root it very well. I can't ground it in the present moment. I feel much more capable of that right now. A lot less scattered. Part of what I'm experiencing with this is the need to breathe into where I can feel the roots in my body of this regrowing inadequacy. This regrowing sense of the reaction of, but what about me? What does that mean about me? Am I not doing enough? Maybe I should write more. Maybe I should push more. I used to listen to that voice, to that urgency, rather. It's not a voice, to this, the movement of energy. I used to let that govern a lot of my thinking. That's part of why I ended up putting so much energy into trying to save the world. I need to do more. And it burned me out. It brought me to the edge of being suicidal at one point. So this question, well, what about me? What does it say about me? It's like this cramp around something, just wanting to feel into it. So that instead of trying to think out into the world, I'm actually reaching in and feeling that location in my body and breathing into it. Finding the place in myself from which I can love the fact that it's there, not because it has a silver lining, but because it's true that it's here. This speaks to the video I made a few days ago about answering the problem of evil. I still feel a lot of excitement about that, a lot of happiness. And I think I actually see the answer that fits my system. This recognition of whatever is true, if I can love and prefer that, if I can find enjoyment in that above any given form, then it even retroactively erases evil, and it allows me to fit to the world. Just feeling, here's this regrowing inadequacy. How wonderful is that? Not as a fake out, but to recognize I'm experiencing this. That's quite a gift. Hmm. I think it just loosened. This ends up being useful for someone. That's pretty cool. Then you end up getting, kind of imagining, and here's an example of digging a little deeper to the root of something, breathing into it, bringing utter acceptance. There's a little more work to do here for me, but it's mostly meditative. There isn't more for me to talk about. So I just wanted to show up showing the active edge, like what it's like for me to actually be digging my fingers in the dirt, and what it looks like when I'm in the dirt, when I'm sort of dirty. I actually really like these tender states. I'm very open. I don't feel like a powerful warrior, but I can very clearly feel the value of what I'm doing, and the trust I have in the dark guiding hand of Saturn, so to speak. Thanks for listening.